Well, good evening, everyone. I'm Wes Gannaway from the Whatcom County Historical Society, and I'm sitting inside the production studio at the Light Catcher Museum. And I want to welcome everybody here tonight. I have a couple of items to talk about before we start the program. The board of the Whatcom County Historical Society has said that they will maintain their positions on the board and as officers through 2021 until the hopefully have the election in December of 2021 at that meeting. We have the journals are out early this year. We have plenty of time to get those ready, and so for those of you who want to get the journal, they're available at Village Books. And for the members that prepaid for the journal, they're being mailed to you. So that's about all I have. So I think I'm just going to jump right into the presentation tonight, as I'm the one that's giving it. So we're going to talk about the Richards Building. So a lot of people, they have known different names for it. They have you have the Acres taxidermy shop. You have the old brick building on E Street. We just call it the Richards Building. And so the building was built in 1858. There's a gold rush that happened here in 1858. Actually, it started in 1857 when Hudson Bay Company took about 600 ounces of gold down to San Francisco to the mint. The word got out, and by May, there were several thousand people up here, gold miners from California. They were arriving daily by boat, and by the 1st of June, it's estimated that there were probably 10,000 people along the shores of Bellingham Bay. So there had been a couple of business partners, Hyatt and Richards, who had built a general store in a location that's now about Astor Street, halfway between E Street and D Street. They decided that because of the conditions here and how the town was going to grow into quite a large city and all of that, that they would go ahead and they would build a brick building. Everything else was kind of a wooden shack at the time. So in June, I believe June 11th, they bought a property on E Street. It had just been platted by Peabody and Roeder, and so they had the lots marked out, and so they picked the lot, and they then hired John Alexander, who everybody that knows that name, he built a block house in Coopville. Had to where he lived and had his farm there. So he took the contract for $8,000, and on July 16th, they started building it. Here's a note. Now that these ads, they ran daily in the San Francisco Bee, or Sacramento Bee, the San Francisco papers, even the Alta paper out in the Goldfields in Alta, California. There was one ship right after another. Sometimes there'd be 8 to 10 ships in Bellingham Bay with miners coming ashore. And so that was quite a crowd. What they were waiting for was a trail to be built from Bellingham Bay up to Hope, BC. And then, of course, that would get them to the river, to the Fraser River where the gold was, and then up into the Thompson River. So here's a drawing of that trail. Now the trail took several weeks to clear. It never was much more than a footpath or maybe a pack horse or two. But by the time the trail was finished, of course, the gold rush was over. That's a way of them anyhow. So in June of 1858, there was a survey ship in here, and they drew a drawing of the town of Whatcom. As you see, everything's up against the bluff, and the beach is out. You can see the guys working, probably digging clams. So the building is going to be built just to the right side of this drawing. You can see the gully where F Street is today, and you can see Pickett's house up on the hill. Now this does not represent probably all of the buildings that were there. Most of them were tents, and there were even people that lived on rafts out in the bay. To give you an example of how these things looked back then, there's the original shoreline in this drawing. You can see the location of the brick building will be on the left side of that drawing between Astor and Holly. And then you have the Eldridge's log house up on the hill, the block house that they built in 1856. You can see the position of the Pickett house in relationship to everything else. The first mill in the mouth of the Whatcom Creek, the wooden picket bridge, which really wasn't there yet. It was going to be built in the middle of the year. And then the future of the Colony Mill, that would be built in 1883. Here's a drawing done by Steve Mayo, a painting, watercolor. And it takes place, this is, would have been July 17th, 1858. They're offloading the Ann Perry, taking the bricks ashore. The bricks came from a brick make business on the north side of San Francisco Bay. That was, it didn't come around the Cape Horn. So you can see, if you could see this really close, you would see thousands of people along the beach. Steve did a wonderful job with a one-hair brush painting people. This is a letter we got from Roland Miller, who is the great-grandson of Mr. Hyatt, the partner. And he talks about the fact that his great-grandfather and his great-grandmother, who was a native, Annie was her name, they lived upstairs in the building. And there'll be another mention of this man later. This is the earliest known photograph of Whatcom. It was taken around 1874. Some copies of this picture say 1873, 1874. If you look to the left side of the picture, you will see that there's a couple of buildings. There's also the E Street dock, which ran out into the bay. You're looking at mud flats, so I had to go out quite a ways. And the white building to the left is the first, that was the Northern Light newspaper office, and it would end up to being the first school in Whatcom County. It was a private school run by Edward Eldridge. Then you got the brick building, and then right about in the center of the picture, you have the Whatcom Hotel. Then you have a number of other buildings. And then on the right, you start to see the buildings for downtown, quote unquote, Whatcom. Up on the hill is the Eldridge cabin and the office for the sawmill. The office is sitting on the east side of the creek. It runs down through that dark patch there. This is a close-up of that, showing the building. 1874, it had kind of been, it was built right on the beach, and during high tide with a storm coming in, the waves would actually hit the side of the building. And what they did was they laid a row of Chuckanut sandstone slabs, and then they laid the brick on top, so the bottom of the building is actually about 4 to 5 feet below the level of the ground today. Now, back then, of course, it was sitting right on the beach. And then you can see that everything's kind of up. And you can notice, if you notice in this picture, there's a bunch of boards or logs are pushed against the outside wall. During high tides, the water would undercut the wall, and eventually they had to support it. And it was like that most of the time up until about 1880. You see, it's a flat roof, had a tin roof, brick sidings. You see the windows and whatnot. They all had shutters on them. Now the steel shutters you know, we'd been led to believe, though, it was against Indian attack. But dozens of buildings, brick buildings in San Francisco and Sacramento also had shutters. And the main reason they had shutters on them was in case of fire. Because you could close up the shutters, you had a tin roof and a brick exterior and steel covers. You weren't too worried about fire coming from outside into the building. The Whatcom Hotel was, I have some information that it was built during the gold rush, but it wouldn't have been looking like this. It would have been more looking like a house. And this is actually construction that was done around 1871. Here's an 1883 drawing of that same area with the Colony Mill just starting up in 1883 on the right. The original mill burned in 1873 and was never rebuilt. So the Colony Mill sat just about where the original mill was. You see the building on the left still has the props against the wall. Just an interesting thing. This is the building taken about 1888. If you notice, it still has the steel shutters on the doors. I don't think there ever was any ones put on the windows, but the hinge pivots are still there. As you see, by that time, now if you looked in the 1874 picture, there were no outside stairs. The way you accessed the top floor was by ladder up through an opening in the floor up above. And that's where Hyatt and his family lived. And then later on, when he sold his share to Richards, that's where Richards lived. Now you see the building's still on pilings. Actually, the brick went clear down to the beach, so the only thing on the pilings was the floor inside on the bottom. And that would prove to be a pain in the, well, anyhow, it gave them issues later. The building to the left is the front, or the back actually, of the Whatcom Hotel. This is a picture taken in 1883, and it's looking from the walkway on the Chicago Hotel, which is to the right in the picture. You can see the back of the building, and you can see the shoreline, so you can get a better idea of what it looked like back then. This was before any of the streets were laid. This was, everything that was down in this area was on pilings above the water line. And so we're standing just about in the middle of Holly Street, looking towards the building in this picture. There's no Holly Street yet. That wouldn't come, it was, I think, complete in 1889. This is a Sandberg map of the area taken. This one's done in 1883. And in the upper left where it says 9, that's the courthouse and the Whatcom Hotel in that block. And it shows the walkways and talks, you know, a little bit of symbols about where the doors and windows were, things like that. And then the line that goes down through there is the shoreline still at that time. And there's no Holly Street. Here's one that's done a couple of years later. And it basically, you can see it's down towards a lower middle in this photograph, and now there's a Holly Street. It's called 13th Street at the time, and in 1903 they changed it to Holly Street because the realtors didn't like the number 13. This is a picture taken about that same time, well, shortly afterwards, because you can see Holly Street, well, 13th Street at the time, is on pilings now, and it extends all the way back to the Phelps block, the large building in the back, which had just been completed. And it ends there, and it didn't cross Whatcom Creek for another maybe 5 years. So you see the front of the building. You see there's a few doors missing because they've taken the steel doors off. Now, the reason that they did that is because they were going to use some of that metal work over in the new courthouse, which was being built. You can still see the roof of the white building in the front. And then you see the kitchen of the hotel to the left of the brick building. Here's a picture taken a little while later, This shows the access from Holly Street going down to the shoreline, and then it shows all the pilings and stuff and all the water. You can see where the water's come in and deposited logs and things. And you see a bunch of pictures of people on this. Now, this was taken probably about a year before the building actually was, well, almost condemned. And they were thinking about building a new courthouse. At about this time, they spent about $50,000 getting the building back into some service. They couldn't hold court in it because the judges wouldn't go upstairs in it, and they had to move some of the offices out. There's several people of note in this picture: Edward Eldridge, Henry Roeder. They're standing by the bottom of the stairs, and Roeder's son-in-law, Roth, Charles Roth, he's up in the doorway. This is a picture done in a map done in 1893. Now, you see where it's, you got Holly Street, and then you've got E Street, which doesn't have the E on it, but it's on the left side going up and down. And you can see the courthouse in there. It's called the the hall. It's a hall. It's the hall for the Ladies Auxiliary of the Grand Army of the Republic. And if you notice, there's little signs on there which indicate a pitched roof. That happened sometime between, probably around 1889 is when they put the pitched roof on. And there was a reason for that, and that's that the tin roof had finally deteriorated to the point where it just leaked like a sieve. And you see the center street there, which of course was given up a little while later. Here's a picture of the building taken in 1903, and it's now the GAR Hall. They paid $800 for it, and it was a building that cost $8,000 to build back in 1858. And so it's their GAR Hall. You see the streets raised, and I wasn't quite sure of the date of that street raising. However, when Ella Hickinson came into town, she mentioned the fact that they were raising the streets, and she arrived here in 1888. So sometime around 1888 or 89, they raised the street level. So what they've done is, of course, they put the steps in, and then they cut an opening in one of the windows to enter, so they could enter the top. Oh, another mention here too is that the stairs are gone by now. Here's another picture of it, a little better. Shows the street level, a little better. The hotel's still there. It's not torn down until 1923. In the 1930s, during the Depression, Roosevelt had they hired a whole bunch of out-of-work people to go back and do architectural drawings of all the old courthouses in the United States. So they came over and they did one of this building, and they drew out plans for it, the interior layout of the building and such, as it was at the time. So that's basically what the Historical Society used when they did the first restoration of the building. As you can see, there's no dirt around it. It's sitting by itself, pretty much. Here's the water side of the building, the Holly Street side. You see it goes all the way down. It's probably maybe still at this point you'd have to dig around it another 3 or 4 feet to get to the bottom of the brickwork. As you see, it looks pretty kind of I don't know, neglected. So it was a church. It was some other things too, general store, church, cabinet shop, pottery studio. It was, for a while it was used by the subsidiary of the Masonic Lodge. there were a number of things that it was used for. But in 1955, Carl and Nikki Akers bought the building, and that became Akers Taxidermist Shop. And that's probably how most people now remember the building. As you notice, most of the brickwork has been covered up around the sides and the back, and eventually the front with a small layer of concrete to keep the moisture from going through the brick. Back then they didn't compress the brick. It was very porous, and it was just like a sponge. The water would go right through the brick into the interior. So he's made an attempt there to keep his stuff dry inside, and so he's covered it. Here's another view of it. Now this picture was taken in 2004, and you can see it's got a metal roof on it. The old roof rotted away. There's two chimneys on this side, one on the other to heat it. They had a coal room downstairs, and they burned coal in the pot-bellied stoves. And that middle chimney on it is coming from a kiln for pottery. And so it was being used by several people at the time. Base camp had been in here. They moved across the street to another building, the log building that's kitty corner. And most of this is pottery studio with a bunch of other things going on in it at the time. There for a while, it was the underground spot for the people that were heading for Canada during the Vietnam War. In 2003, Carl and Nikki approached the Whatcom County Historical Society, and they said, you know, we can't handle the building anymore. We're getting up there in age. We don't know what to do with it. We'd like to save it. And they asked the Historical Society to see if they wanted to take it. So the Historical Society formed a committee to study what we could do with the building if we got a hold of it. They came up with saying, yeah, we could probably do something with it. So Carl and Nikki Akers donated the building to the society. So we went in. This actually took place in the fall of 2003, and we cleaned the building. Now, during the period of time that it had been used as a studio for musicians, there were actually 10 little rooms up in the attic even that people actually lived in. They were had mattresses on the floor and all. And so one day we went in one weekend and cleaned out the building. This is what we got out of the building. So there was a lot of work involved, and if you look above the right window, you will see a 6-inch crack in the wall. So we were really concerned about the building. We were concerned of the fact that, hey, something bad can happen here, the wall could go out, whatever, and that would end the building. That would be the end of it. So we agreed to work on it, and the first thing we did was we got people to donate money, the county and a bunch of people, so we could get that wall fixed. Another thing that happened was, of course, the roof leaked like a sieve, and it was warping the floor. And so we had a contractor come in and volunteer to put a temporary roof on the building for us. This is the inside. We had removed the windows. The interior was still brick. It had been used as a church for a long time by the Jehovah's Witnesses. That's the only known photograph of the interior of the building during a wedding that they held inside. And the walls were all covered with cloth, and the windows were all blacked in, so there was no way to see in or out. So we're removing all of the window frames and everything to start our restoration on the brick. This is downstairs. This is the staircase. Staircase had probably been in since about 1870. We know that there was an earlier one, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. That door down in the end on the right is going into the bathroom. There's the bathroom. Now, if you notice, the toilet is sitting up on a platform because the level of the bottom of the building was below the high tide mark, and when the tide would come in, it would back the water up in the sewer line. And so they had to raise the toilet above that level. So here's the back of the building. We've hired a brick mason to come in and do the repairs, and as you can see, they had to take a big chunk out. You can see the old support structure for the roof and whatnot in there, the ceiling. And so we've stripped everything out of the building, except for the flooring on the second floor and the interior walls. The bottom floor was concrete. It had been put in by Carl, who got tired of trying to repair the old wooden floor, which kept caving into the bottom of the building because the pilings had rotted away. Okay, this is the building during the restoration. This is the upstairs room where the courtroom was. And we've redone a lot of the building. By now we're working on finishing up the interior. The walls were plastered, lath and plaster. Then we're putting up the wainscoting that showed on the plans for the 1935 drawings. So we're doing it just like the plans said. Now, the floor we thought was original because of the way it had been worn. And so we're trying to keep that, and eventually we will make it look pretty good. This is downstairs. Rick Tremaine is cutting some of the trim work for the doorways and whatnot. We spent probably, I don't know what, 3,000 or 4,000 hours on the building. We started in 2004 and we ended up in 2009. So it took 5 years to restore the building because we kept running out of money, basically. We got a lot of grants from the county and a big one from the state to do most of the work. Another thing that had to happen was we had to make the building earthquake proof, and so that cost about a third of that money. This is the party that was given. It was a party that was for the big contribution people and the contractor. The guy in the picture that's looking this way is Miles Donnelly. He was the primary contractor on the reconstruction, and he donated a lot of time and money to help us out. This was on August 25th, 2011. 4 days later, we had an open house for everyone, and this happened to be there was a little bit of history with the natives, the local natives. So the Nooksack tribe came in and they blessed the building for us. One of the things that kind of happened was that Hyatt's wife was a Nooksack Indian. This is Roland Miller, and he's talking with Nikki Akers on the left and Carl Akers on the right. And so he came up for our 160th anniversary of the building program. One of the issues was the moisture in the brick. So about 2017, we started noticing a lot of deterioration on the plaster and the wainscoting. We said, well, you know, we're going to have to work on that. And so we looked at getting something to help us out. Well, there wasn't any product that could really help us out. And so we said, well, we'll just have to keep doing little repairs here and there. And then in let's see, what would that have been? December 2017, we had the sump pump quit working, and the water backed up into here in a heavy rain. Put 6 inches of water inside the building on the floor there. And so we ended up with warped floorboards and a lot of damage to the wainscoting downstairs. So we raised enough money to do that. On the same time we were trying to do that, we had to install a lift, a wheelchair lift for the lower half of the building for handicap access. And so we ran into financial difficulties again. So at that point, we decided to sell the building. Well, Rick Tremaine, who had been a primary person in restoration of the building, said, well, you know, we need to do something here. He said, I'll buy the building. So he bought the building, and he had it for a year. We still could not fix the problem of the water. The brick, it's just, we had a dehumidifier put in, and it ran 24 hours a day. We still had issues. So we decided that he couldn't handle it. He couldn't raise the funds to do whatever needed to be done. So in March of 2019, Brad Parberry bought the building. And Brad had decided to, he wanted the building because he had been doing a lot of restoration in the area, and he saw that, you know, maybe he could do something with the building. So what he did was he stripped everything back out of the building. And we started up with a whole new concept of how to stop the leakage of water through the brick. And that was to put in a double wall. So the wall that you see framed in is actually on the inside of that original wall. There's an inch gap between the brick and the backside of this wall, and there's a water resistant or waterproof seal on the other side of that wall that's facing the brick. So no water can get through it into the main part of the building. And if you look on that back wall, you'll see a seam, a black seam running up and down along the wall, and that's the edges of the seal where it joins, the two walls join. He did this all the way around both levels of the building. He, in fact, even trimmed back on the edges of the flooring and resealed all of that. And that was his answer to stopping the moisture damage in the building. Meanwhile, he's taken everything out of the building. In the process of doing some work on the flooring upstairs, we realized that the flooring that was there was not the original. For the first, number one was that there were black marks on the floor. You can see them there. And that was an indication that this was not old growth fir or cedar. It was newer than that. Plus, that mill could not do tongue and groove wood. So we realized right away that that was not the original floor. That had probably been put in when it was redone in 1871 or maybe even later. You can see the wall, the flooring along the edge of that, underneath it, is the original floor. Here's another photo of it. This is in the entryway. As you see, that mill, they didn't cut dimension lumber. They could cut the thickness, but they couldn't cut the width because they cut whatever came through the saw. So you see there's different widths on each board. Here's another picture of it. You can see there, they had seams in it. You can see the new wall going in on that left side there. And but that's the original flooring. There were 2 layers, 1 1/8 or something like that, of boards on top of the floor joists. Meanwhile, on the outside of the building in the back, we're looking at that. They were looking at the brick thinking, you know, now that we've got the seal on the inside, why don't we do something with the outside? This is what it looks like now. They removed all the concrete and cleaned it all up, repointed the brick, and so it looks like it's brand new, but it's the old brick. Now, about 1960, they were filling in all around the building with gravel, pea gravel. The city was. Now, where I'm standing taking this picture was a right-of-way. It was an alley access. And of course, that's been given back to the building now. But at that time, they were filling in all the way around, and they were using pea gravel. Well, at one point, they started pushing in the wall on the side of the building. So Carl ran out and stopped them, and they dug all that pea gravel back out. So from this level on down, it's concrete, the wall is. But when they got to the point where it would show, they put in new brick. Well, Brad said, you know, if we're going to make this back to what it was, we're going to have to do something there. So they got a brick mason to come in and remove the first outer layer of brick. And what he's doing is he's putting in old brick to match what was there. And it was the brick from the Hull burning, the Hull store, Hull's store there on Railroad after their fire. He got that brick and he cleaned it up, and now he's using it on his building. This is in the upstairs. This is looking at the bottom of the upstairs floor. Now you got the floor joists in there. They were 3 inches wide, 3.5 inches wide, and 10 inches high. They were made out of old growth fir, most of them. That was the entry that the ladder went up through. It was framed specifically for that. So that we found that as they were removing all of the ceiling work. Everything was done with tendon joints. This was the original skylight that they had actually put it in when they built the building to let light in upstairs because it was pretty dark up there. And you can see that some later on it probably leaked too, so they sealed it off and they soldered tin coverings on it. Here's the 2 layers of tin. It was all soldered tin, and it lasted for a while, but it didn't hold up to the weather here. There's where one of the stovepipes went through, and if you look over in the side there, you'll see up against the wood there on the side, you'll see the rotted tin. So that's why they put that roof on. This is the inside wall being reframed, and you'll see the putting ductwork in, and they're going to put in a Super Duty dehumidifier system along with a heating system. And so they're redoing everything over. This is the stairway that is in there now is larger than the one that was originally put in. They had, it was even steeper than the one we have now, and that's pretty steep. And here's the original framing of the first staircase going down. Here they're doing the seal along the edges of the flooring, around the joists where they go into the brickwork. They originally what they did was they'd take a steel bar and they'd bend both ends and they'd put one in the wood and then they'd put the other one in the middle of the brick, and that was to help support everything, keep it all together. When it came to the edges of the boards matching, they laid down sailcloth in between the joints to keep the boards from getting moisture through, and also to help keep everything clean. Now, Had two families living upstairs from 1858 till 1863 when they sold it to the county as a courthouse. And so the pot-bellied stove would have sat off to the left of this about 2 feet. And these are hatchet marks from where they split the kindling. So when I say they found some interesting things, that's one of them. This is looking up at the ceiling, and this is the way it's going to stay. It's been cleaned up and stained, but they wanted to leave an open ceiling. And you can see the way they installed it. There's some newer boards up there. You can see by the dark marks in them. So at one point they had to do some repairs to the roof besides the new roofing. There's that wall. It's been replaced. It now looks just as, everything matches. It's all cleaned up and looking pretty good. Here's another picture of the south wall, the one that faces Holly Street. So you can see there's been a lot of work done. This is the bathroom. Now, we don't have problems with the sewer anymore. One of the things that we did was we put in a drain system around the building to pea gravel and piping to direct any water that collected under the building into a sump that pumps the water over a weir into the city sewer system. So we don't have issues with that. However, if that sump pump ever quits, they'll have a water problem again. So they're putting in a backup system. This right above that window, that's one of the old windows that were doorways. You can see the brick on each side of that entry into the bathroom. So that was one of the entries into the building originally. Here's the rafters. You can see saw marks in them. So we know that it was a circular saw, but some of them have cross cuts, like they cut the board twice, once rough cut and then second time ran it through the saw blade to get a smoother surface to work with. They did not have a planer mill at that time. Here's another view of it. Now if you look between the boards, you can see the bottom of the tin. So there wasn't a whole lot of insulation in the building. That's why they had 3 pot-bellied stoves going in it. Now, of course, that ceiling has been insulated on the top side. Here's the storeroom. This was the coal bin. There's actually a manhole there where they used to dump the coal into this room, and then they would haul it out through that doorway. That's another one of the original doors that were on the front of the building. And so you can see the brick columns that would have supported that. And if you look close, you'll see the hinge points, the little pieces of metal that are sticking out on the edges of the brickwork. That's where those steel doors were mounted. And you see the double wall there now. This is the upstairs room. Here we have the foreman for the job, Tom Scanlon, is talking with Brad Parbury about some aspect of the work. Tom's spent decades doing restorations in these buildings. There isn't too much he doesn't know about them. If you notice the windows, you're not seeing the white framework. That's because there's 2 windows. There's actually an outside window, the original one, and then they put another window in to give a double layer. Here's a picture of it. It's just about done. They're finishing up work on the cabinetry for the downstairs area. You can see his lights and the open ceiling, and the original floor has been all cleaned up and stained, and the door on the right has been redone. No handle on it yet. They don't want anybody going in and out of it, I guess. Here's the downstairs. Whole new lighting system, all rewired. Everything was rewired and replumbed, and they've stained everything to match the upstairs now, and it's looking pretty good. Here's the kitchen area. It's got a 1920s style to it, the rounded corners on the refrigerator, and all the cabinetry work has the handles and knobs and stuff are all from older homes, 1920s or 30s style. Here's the front of the building now. You see it's looking pretty good. Eventually all the fencing is going to be replaced with something that would have been appropriate for say 1850 or 70 or whatever. If you notice, there's no big sign out front anymore. That sign's been taken off. It's going to be cleaned up, and it's going to be mounted on the wall inside of the building. So we have some new signs. And in case you didn't know already, it's Brad is going to have it as an art museum for the Helen Logie art collection. So the building is called the Logie now. And so in order to celebrate the origins of the building, there is another sign up. It says the 1858 brick building, oldest brick building in Washington State. While I was going through the building one day, taking pictures of the construction work and stuff, I noticed this on the wall taped up, and so I took a picture of it. And boy, it looked familiar to me. It looked like something I'd be interested in, so I'm showing it to everybody now. And that was Tom's version of the outside stairway. And I thought, well, okay, that would be nice to have. And so there's the outside stairway. It isn't in use yet, but it's there. And so that's something that we haven't seen on a building for since 1889. So there's a lot still going on. I think the building will be complete by the end of the month, and so it's going to be interesting to be able to get back in it. Our office is downstairs. It'll be there. We haven't moved for the Historical Society, and there's other things happening to the building for its use. So it's now the pride and joy of everyone that's been involved with it. And so I feel pretty good about where it ended up. I was a little concerned at first, but that's just, it needed some more tender care than what we could give it. And I'm sure happy it's been taken care of. So I don't have anything else on the building at this time, so thank you for all sitting through this presentation. So next month, there'll be no meeting next month. December meeting, normally we would have an open house with our board meeting and then some show and tells and things like that. And because of the situation we're in, we're not going to hold that meeting. So the next meeting will be in January, and we'll see Lanny Little's program. Thank you.